What's up, good people? It's the new edition of the 𝗵𝘃 podcast presented by Toyota. Toyota has more all-wheel drive and four-wheel drive vehicles than any other brand, so find yours and shine on. Toyota, let's go places. Cam Smith, riding with my man 𝗻𝐶 Johnson, 𝗻𝐶 Bulls Insider, for another edition of the offseason podcast. And 𝗻𝐶, one, it's getting sunnier and warmer in Chicago. Like, as we record this on Tuesday afternoon, I'm just looking outside my window. One, I'm like, man, it's finally, maybe we have turned a little bit of a corner, but I still got my guard up, man. I haven't officially changed out my closet yet with my warmer summertime clothes, man.
Yeah, it's you know they can always bite you if you do that. So it probably wait a couple of weeks.
Definitely holding out on that, man. I should know better as well, but I'm just thirsty for the summer, just tired of the cold weather. But speaking of things heating up, some conversations have heated up among the basketball space and a lot of Bulls fans since this is the offseason. Hypotheticals have started to run wild with one specific superstar that is just north of the city of Chicago in Wisconsin. And it's Giannis 𝗵𝗶. Obviously, we saw how things have ended once again for the Milwaukee Bucks. Third consecutive first-round exit for that Bucks team. They've only won one playoff series, 𝗻𝐶, since they won that championship back in 2021. And people are factoring in, with this cast around Giannis 𝗵𝗶. Of course, as I mentioned, they've lost 3 straight first-round playoff series. We saw the unfortunate Achilles injury to Damian Lillard, so we go with the mindset of him possibly missing the entire season in 25-26. And now people are wondering, do you think that Giannis will look elsewhere to try and find that championship while he's still in his prime? I think Giannis still has like 5, maybe 6 years left in this prime, but Bulls fans are hoping that maybe there can be some type of concoction or something built around to help lure Giannis away from the Milwaukee Bucks. And 𝗻𝐶, I know you touched on this on the fast break, but man, you got to give people a dose of reality of what's happening with this Giannis situation.
Well, I mean, look, the NBA offseason is arguably as much fun as the season, especially for fans. I mean, this is when you play armchair GM, et cetera, et cetera. And look, this all stems from Giannis in 2020 flat out saying that, how can you not respect the legacy of Michael Jordan? And maybe one day you can see himself playing there. But let's start. I think before we go any further, Cam, we need to start with the fundamental basic, and that is Giannis and the Bucks have a very special and unique relationship. And to this point, nobody has said that Giannis will be put in play. This is all speculation coming from fans and media members, because as you and I accurately said on the last taping of this, the Bucks window is closed. And, it's clear that they need to do something, especially with Dame, missing most, if not all, of next season. But look, they could certainly choose to try to keep Giannis and restart around him. I mean, that's a pretty good starting point. And as I said, that's a very unique relationship. The loyalty that has flowed both ways is real. It's genuine. So let's start there. Hypothetically, if he is put in play, it's not going to be a Luka Doncic situation. It's going to be opened up to the entire league. And I just personally see a lot of teams that are better suited to be able to engineer a trade for Giannis than the Bulls.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, 𝗻𝐶. And you know that if Milwaukee decides to part ways with Giannis, they're going to try and see his go and offer him to as many teams as they can to try and see what the best offer will be. I think that would just be smart on their part, and they understand that too. But that relationship is just so great. And it's one thing for Milwaukee that they always do a end of season assessment with Giannis, the front office, and just kind of seeing what he needs and where this team can go, especially trying to maximize just the best of his abilities while he still has them right before he starts to hit the decline. And Giannis is far away from that. So when you look at that, it has to be something that sparks it. And to your point, this isn't anything on Giannis's end or the Bucks' end or Giannis's agent or one of his brothers coming out and saying anything. It's nothing like that. It's more so of just the wishful thinking of a lot of teams, Bulls fans, since we're doing the 𝗵𝘃 podcast. But it's you look at Giannis and his contract and the money that is owed for him, it's a hefty amount. Now, he's not going to be an unrestricted free agent until 2028, 2029. He signed a couple of Supermax deals. And so that, for me, thinking on how things can be packaged up to acquire Giannis, you're going to have to give up a lot. And when people think a lot, all right, maybe a couple of first-round picks. No, it's going to be multiple first-round picks for Giannis, of course, with players as well.
Yeah, and every pick swap that you can think of. I mean, look, this is a top 3 player in the world, definitely. And, the other reason why this speculation is starting is because of what Giannis had said in the direct aftermath of the loss to the Pacers, that he wants to win another championship. And, he's been consistent with that. And so, until he, though, says, like, I want to do that at all costs and want to leave Milwaukee to do that, this is all just speculation. I mean, but to your point, let's play the fantasy game. Let's say it gets to the point where the Bucks put him in play, and Giannis and the Bucks work together to try to find him a new home. I mean, let's start with the number you talk about. I mean, the salary cap isn't set yet, but I mean, you can project he's going to be near $54 million for next season. So you got to put a lot of numbers together to get up to that number from a Bulls perspective. And maybe I'm wrong. I said this pretty emphatically on the fast break. I maybe rethought it a little bit. I mean, maybe with Vooch being expiring, they'd have some interest in that because he'd be cap relief after next season. But I don't see Vooch as a fit in Milwaukee. So taking Vooch out, to get to that number, you're going to need a sign and trade of Josh Giddey. You're going to need Kobe White. They're absolutely going to ask for '𝗏𝗏 𝗟𝗏. I mean, you can say no, but they're going to ask for him. And then, like I said, it's going to take every first-round draft pick and every pick swap you can think of. I mean, this is, and quite frankly, this is probably what would happen with Luka if Nico Harrison had, opened up the bidding to more than one team. So yeah, it's a long shot. I do say never in this league. And obviously Giannis would be really fun to see in a Bulls uniform, but I think it's more wishful thinking at this point than reality.
Yeah, no doubt. And again, sorry, Bulls fans, but it's just wishful thinking. I understand that the hypotheticals are running. I'm not sure, Casey, if you've seen that meme of Zach Galifianakis when he's in The Hangover 2, I believe, or maybe it might be 3, but he's kind of like computing the numbers because he's at the casino. It might be the first one, but computing the numbers like he's in the casino and stuff like that. That's what Bulls fans are doing like right now, trying to figure out how to get Giannis to Chicago. And look, you're basically going to mortgage the future to try and get Giannis to Chicago, because I'm sure that the Bucks and John Horst, their GM, is going to ask for everything and try and transform himself into Sam Presti, the Thunder's GM, who just won Executive of the Year. We just saw that announcement a couple of hours ago. And so shout out to him there. But you're going to try and get as many first-round picks as you can. So that's why I bring up the reference of Sam Presti, because, Oklahoma City has about 50 first-round draft picks just stockpiled for themselves in their future, KC.
Yeah, and the last thing to say about this, and again, it's every front office's job to remain nimble and adjust plans on the fly and have multiple pronged plans moving forward. But that said, the other thing to emphasize here, Cam, is like you heard Arturas' season-ending news conference. That sounded like a guy ready to, after finally acquiring all their draft picks back, that sounded like a guy ready to plunge it back into what he did in 2021 and just send out the moon to go big splash hunting. That's not what I heard. I heard a guy asking fans for patience, crowing about how they have control of all their first round picks, and talking about internal player development. So I heard a methodical rebuild there. I did not hear let's cash it all in for Giannis. And again, look, if Giannis is put in play, and you don't make a phone call, that's malpractice. You have to at least pick up the phone and say, what would it take? What do you think about this, preliminary offer? But, I personally do not see the Bulls going big game hunting this offseason. I heard a methodical approach from Arturas 𝗏𝗏 at that season-ending news conference.
Yeah, no, definitely taking their time on things. It's not going to be something where you're just going to put into the microwave, put it on a couple of minutes, and then it's good to go. Like, no, this is going to be a full cooked meal with what they're planning for this Bulls franchise, and some recipes and making sure that everything, the ingredients, are right to make a great meal for Bulls fans. And so that's the plan for them. And the hope is that it is a 5-star meal for this team. So we'll see how that unfolds. But KC, man, thinking about just obviously with Giannis, and you talk about that window for the Bucks being closed, and I agree with you on that. Something that, as you mentioned, we touched on with the last By the Horns podcast. The team that closed that window, the Indiana Pacers, in the second round, man, one, we knew that the playoffs have been drama-filled. Like, the first round was great. We loved damn near every series except for the ones that were sweeps, Cleveland, Miami. If you look at 𝗏𝗏𝘃 and Memphis, but every other one was great. But to see it transition to the second round and the game one upsets that we saw, one with Indiana, the Pacers in Cleveland against the Cavs, beating them game 1 on Sunday. Then we saw yesterday 2 game 1s with the Knicks, cardiac Knicks, reviving themselves and beating the Celtics in overtime in Boston. And then the nightcap, 𝗏𝗏𝗏 with all the hype and all this, the anticipation of them against, the Denver Nuggets. And you have the former NBA MVP and 𝗍𝗏𝗏 𝗍𝗏𝗏, the reigning MVP, I should say. And then also, again, the presumptive NBA MVP for this season, 𝗏𝗍 Gilgeous-Alexander, going up against each other. And it's Jokic and the Nuggets coming out with that win, thanks to Aaron Gordon for another game winner on his end. So, KC, let's start with Cavs Pacers and that team that closed the Bucks championship window and Tyrese Haliburton, because this team has really opened up a lot of eyes for people that were non-believers with the Pacers.
Yeah, and you mentioned, Cam, how good that first round was. And, I mean, we're taping this before game 1 of the Warriors-Timberwolves, but the other 3 series, the road teams are 3-0. I mean, it's been incredible stuff. And, I remember when Indiana closed out Milwaukee in that incredible overtime comeback. I tweeted like Cavs Pacers are going to be fun. And a lot of people clapped back at me saying Cavs were going to make quick work of them. And I didn't see it. And, this is even before I knew Garland was still going to be out. Even at full strength, I think that's going to be a close series. I think, the Cavaliers are obviously a wonderful team. And now they're banged up even more beyond Garland. So we'll see how that plays out. But even at full strength, to me, the Pacers, they match up well. They've got bigs. They've got size. They've got incredible depth. They come at you offensively in waves. They just keep rotating guys in that can, 3-and-D you to death. They're well built on the wings. And obviously in Haliburton and Siakam, you've got 2 either current or former All-Stars leading the way. So, I think that series is going to go 6 or 7, especially if Garland stays out. And now Mobley's questionable as well. And the Pacers, to me, I mean, you keep hearing 𝗵𝗂 𝗍𝗏𝗂 talk about, building out a team with depth in this new roster iteration and getting 9 or 10 guys who can play and coming at you in waves. When I watch the Pacers, that to me is probably the idealized version of what 𝗵𝗂 is saying. And that's probably giving 𝗵𝗂 a little bit too much of the benefit of the doubt, because he does not have Siakam and Haliburton on his roster as of yet. I mean, he's got an aging former All-Star and 𝗍𝗏𝗏𝗍𝗏, who had a wonderful season last year, but, is not at Siakam's level. And then, as good as Giddey and Kobe White have been, they're not at Haliburton's level. So, but man, I like the Pacers. I love Nembhard. I love Ben Shepherd coming in off the bench, shooting it. Nesmith is just, he can ball out. I mean, we haven't even mentioned Bennedict Mathurin, who was like, one of their lottery picks, who used to be a starter and now comes off the bench. They've got a lot of depth, and they just seem well built for the playoffs. And I'm going to be fascinated to see how that series plays out.
Yeah, I'm with you, KC. Indiana's a very dangerous team, and if they can go back home with a 2-0 deficit, and it could be flipped for people that were giving you smoke in your mentions saying that the Cavs are going to make quick work of the Pacers. Well, if Indiana goes back to Gainsbridge Fieldhouse with a 2-0 lead, it might be quick work of the Cavs. Now, I'm going to give the Cavs some credit because obviously they've been one of the better NBA teams, if not the best NBA team, at least in terms of record-wise. But you look at the players that they have with Donovan Mitchell, and it feels like with Indiana and what Rick Carlisle is doing is that, they're going to make Mitchell work for his points, I believe, at 33 in game 1. But for everyone around him, they're really going to limit what they do well. And so that's the greatness of Rick Carlisle and, of course, NBA championship head coach. But he understands that with his team and how they're built, that they can, to your point, KC, throw waves of guys at you that just wear you down. And it makes it even difficult when you don't have your all-star point guard and Darius Garland on the floor with you, as he's still dealing with that toe injury. And you go with Evan Mobley, who, as you mentioned, is questionable. So those are not only 2 all-stars, but 2 guys that can really change the game for your attack. So it could be scary hours for Cavs fans. And if any Cavs fans are out there, maybe pray to your Larry Nance or Mark Price shrine. If you got the LeBron shrine still up, then pray to that as well. But KC, you don't have to throw out those old school names, man, because we come from that era of basketball in terms of just playing and also watching. But this Cavs team is in real danger if they allow Indiana to gain even more confidence. And we knew that Indiana always carried confidence. That's the one thing about this team that I always love. But then also when you get into the playoffs and see how they handle Milwaukee somewhat seamlessly to get to the second round, and we saw what the result was in game 1 against the Cavs. This team is playing fun basketball. They move the basketball. I believe they're leading all playoff teams in assists. I believe they're either 1 or 2 in pace, but how they're shooting the rock as well, above 50% in game 1 from the three-point arc as a road team. It's a very difficult team to try and figure out when guys have it rolling. You look at their starting 5, you talk about Nesmith and guys like 𝗁𝗏 𝗟𝗶𝘀 that loves to show the wealth, but all 5 starters in double figures, and not just guys like at 10 points or 11 points. These guys are like into the high teens, some in the 20s and some in the 30s. So it's just a balanced scoring attack that makes it difficult for defenses to really slow them down, KC.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up Carlisle because I've long thought he's one of the more overlooked coaches in the league. I always have him on my short list of elite coaches. He's masterful at in-game adjustments. Just really, really tactical coach. And look, he's leaned into this offensive style. That's not really totally that's to me a sign of good coaching. Like a lot of those great teams in Dallas were defensive based. You had the defensive player in the year and 𝗪cie Chandler backstopping those Mavericks teams. And I mean, they were good offensively, but they also were really good defensively. This team, Pacers team, is definitely leans into the offensive style. And that's the other thing that reminds me, again, of the idealized version of what Arturas wants to do with the Bulls is you watch how they push pace, particularly after made baskets. I mean, they grab it if it comes through the hoop and get it inbounded right away and push up that court. And they've got multiple ball handlers. Obviously, Tyrese handles the majority of that role, and he's, their best pick and roll player. But in terms of ball handlers, they got grab and go guys throughout that rotation. So I like watching the Pacers play. I picked them over the Bucks. I would probably still lean Cavs, just given, got to give the love to the regular season success. But as you mentioned, if it gets 2-0, it could be I could be wrong on this one, and it's going to be a great series watching that one play out.
Yeah, final note on this series, but more so on the Indiana Pacers, and talking about just to Arturas' point of just developing guys and having 9 to 10 guys on this team. I mean, if you look at the Pacers roster, when you have, for the most part, guys that they either drafted KC or guys that they got younger in their career, like they got 𝗪cie 𝗟𝗶𝘀 in the trade from Sacramento, kind of similar to what we saw with Aaron Nesmith, the young guy that started his career with the Boston Celtics. But when they got those young guys in their first or more so second or third year, they developed them into the players that we see now. Siakam was Siakam. We know that in his time at Toronto, really cemented himself in terms of what his status is in the NBA. But again, Ben Mathurin is another guy, Ben Shepherd, guys that they really develop within the system. And this is really helping them out to this point where you're like, man, Indiana could be a team we see in the Eastern Conference Finals and maybe surprise a lot of people and get to the NBA Finals. I know
they were in the Conference Finals last year. I mean,
exactly, And honestly, look, if Game 1 doesn't go the Jaylen Brown route of him knocking down that desperation corner 3, then we could be talking about something differently in terms of who was the representative in the NBA Finals last year, or even NBA champion. I'll just throw that out there as well. Like Indiana they've gone through their playoff scars. They have the young guys that have the confidence. They have the chemistry that's there, and they have the championship head coach in Rick Carlisle. So could be scary hours for the Cavs, but it's just Game 1, and it's a 7-game series. So we'll see how it unfolds. But speaking of just trying to, calm the nerves and go about this at a smooth pace, it's hard to do that when you see Knicks Celtics, because last night, we talked about Jalen Brunson time and time again, KC, just who he is and what he's been for that Knicks team. But, man, to snatch Game 1 from the Celtics after being down 20 in the third quarter, and Brunson had that opportunity to really end the game with that floater that just rimmed out, but they still double up their efforts in overtime to get that win against Boston. Could we see the Knicks pulling off this upset? And yes, people, it would be an upset, at least in my book, against the 2-seeded Celtics, KC.
I didn't see it, but now you obviously have to consider it after that stealing Game 1 on the road. Again, these are long series. I mean, you like OKC's response to losing Game 1 at home. They're like, look, playoffs are not supposed to be easy. You've got to lean into the adversity, embrace it. I mean, these are going to be all 4 of these series, I think, are going to be pretty long, drawn-out affairs. I picked the Celtics before the series just because, obviously, reigning champs and, obviously they're getting healthy. Drew Holiday was banged up in that first round. Jalen was in and out, but he looks better now. But, man, the way they shot the ball, and they just stay in that style, man. I think they shot close to 63s in Game 1 and just were not hitting. you have to expect some of those to go down as the series progresses. But to your point about the Knicks, what I liked so much about it was Jalen started that comeback, but then you had OG Anunoby really kind of finishing it at the offensive end, and Mikal Bridges finishing it at the defensive end. And Mikal, I put on Twitter, he's become like the new 𝗂𝗏 𝗟𝗏 Jimmy Butler. I mean, 51 to 53 minutes last night.
Yeah, man.
It made me think of that one playoff run when Derek was out in 13-14, where Jimmy played like 48 minutes like 5 times, and then 53 minutes another time because the game went to double overtime. It's like, man,
dude, like giving it to the ice bath immediately when the clock hit 0, man.
Yep,
but definitely for sure.
Yeah,
right, exactly.
Never going to change. But Mikal can handle it. Look, he made the 2 big defensive plays in overtime, so he was still fresh enough to do that. But yeah, I mean, they're a very good team. The Knicks, I still will lean Celtics in that series, just obviously because of what they accomplished last year and in the regular season. But as I said, I think all 4 of these series are going to be fantastic theater. I can't wait to watch it play out.
I'm with you, 𝗪cie. I think the Celtics have to knock off their cool. It felt like they were a little too cool in game 1. I didn't realize that the Knicks are coming out for blood in this one. So I believe that they're woken up, I should say. And game 2 will be very interesting at TD Garden with that team. And then this was the nightcap last night where I got myself in trouble again at home by screaming and just seeing how things finish and almost waking up my 9-month-old daughter and my 8-year-old son. But Nuggets, Thunder, man. This is something that a lot of people anticipated. But it's, again, Aaron Gordon being in the right place at the right time. And Russell Westbrook, the former OKC Thunder great, that fed Aaron Gordon. And just before we briefly get into what we saw last night, but it was so cool to see Oklahoma City and Thunder fans when Westbrook checked into the game, giving him a standing ovation. Like, the amount of respect that they've always carried for Westbrook was really beautiful to see when he was checked into the game last night.
Love that moment. And I've seen former players, including Nick Van Exel, talk about it on Twitter, saying like, man, that is the ultimate sign, because you do not see that in the playoffs. Like that, to have that moment happen in the playoffs, it says a lot about not only Westbrook, but also a lot about that fan base, which is, one of the more passionate and loyal in the league. So that's great stuff. I loved every second of that. I didn't hear what Russ said about it post game, but he had to have loved that. I mean, I know he knows how special that bond is because he's talked about that before. But and obviously then Westbrook's involved in the critical play there, with the push and the dish to Gordon for the game winner. So Adelman rode Westbrook over Michael Porter Jr. down the stretch, which is not always the case. He pushed some right buttons there, and obviously Dagnall's fouling strategy is under great scrutiny today down the stretch. But man, that was a great game 1. The games really was incredible. They were incredible.
Yeah, it really set the tone for the second round. And that's the cool thing about this, what we've seen with the playoffs, is that you have these individual storylines, but also from a team concept. And that's what you want, because the playoffs should be filled with drama and just, some eye-opening things. But for the 3 road teams to be 3-0 in the second round is impressive. So we'll see if Golden State can continue that trend when they face off against the Minnesota Timberwolves tonight. But, just everything, the game within the game with that series is going to be fun to watch, because you have Draymond Green on one side with Golden State, and of course, Anthony Edwards, who never shies away from a challenge, especially when it comes to a verbal challenge. He's going to be there. So all eyes will sure be on that one tonight. So it'll be really, really great. Again, we're going to see game 2 of Cavs Pacers. So that'll be interesting to see how the Cavs rebound in that one. So we're spoiled right now, 𝗪cie, of NBA playoff basketball, and I love it. I love it. It's great. Absolutely. It's great.
and obviously I know OKC lost the game, but seeing Alex Caruso wreak his defensive havoc, I mean, I just never get tired of watching that guy play basketball. Obviously, he had it going on the offensive end too with a 20-point game, but he was just everywhere until Jokic decided to take over down the stretch. But he also had a post-game quote, which should be painful to Bulls fans. Where he talked about
that was tough to hear.
Like, I had plenty of years where I didn't even get to play in the postseason. I had to go to Miami twice and lose and go home and have long summers. I was like, man, you had to take it there, Alex. And actually, now there's been a third time where Miami has given the Bulls a long summer. Alex wasn't a part of that one, and he didn't have to travel to Miami, nor did the Bulls this time. But man, it's just crazy how the Bulls are stuck in this play-in nightmare of not getting past the Heat, and now Alex is chasing a second chip. So.
Man, very, very tough. Yeah, when I saw that video, I'm like, ooh, yeah, that hurts. And it's kind of like looking around. Everybody knew who Caruso was referencing, so it's just like it's tough.
Yeah.
So hopefully we don't have those moments moving forward that we could just keep that there. But again, game 2 will be exciting for that team. But another just kind of quick defensive standpoint with Caruso, 5 steals, KC, 2 blocks. Like to your point, just defensively everywhere, man. Just he's one of the best in the game at what he does on both on defensive end, and then you can't understate just what he can bring offensively if you give him those opportunities. So playoff basketball, very exciting. Some off the court things that we have to finish off on this edition of the By the Horns podcast is the transition in San Antonio of Gregg Popovich, the legendary head coach of the San Antonio Spurs, one of the more iconic coaches that we've had in the game, and not just in the NBA. We know that he suffered that mild stroke back in November of last year, had some health setbacks, and he's going to transition himself from head coach to team president. So he's saying that he's not 𝗻𝗁𝗗𝗋 anymore. I love that. But it's such a special moment with Manu Ginobili, Tim Duncan, 2 guys that were part of that core piece, along with Tony Parker, but helping Popovich and assisting him over to the podium and guiding him to the podium to make those remarks as Mitch Johnson was introduced as the Spurs' new head coach. And it was just a special moment to see that. But then also just to see Popovich still health-wise, still with us, and just being able to still joke around and have some fun, as we know that Pop does. But KC, when you think of Popovich's career and just how he's impacted the game, what comes to mind to you?
Just consistency and impact. I mean, the amount of people that he impacted, his coaching tree is insane. I mean, you've got obviously, this last series, you got Steve Kerr and Ime Udoka going at each other. And I mean, they come from that tree. The tree is extensive. Yeah. Just a commitment to the game, commitment to teaching, consistency of values, consistency of accountability. That to me is what that franchise is all about. It's about consistency and stability. They don't change much, and it works. And there are some people who have formed opinions of Popovich off of sideline treatment of sideline reporters or occasional condescending or too woke political remarks. I mean, he is as giving and as selfless to the game of a coach as you will find. And that's what you're hearing from all these tributes from former players, former coaches that have worked under him, just his impact and how much he gave of himself. And, I'm sure that couldn't have been an easy news conference for him yesterday as he continues to recover physically. And then obviously also letting go of a job that he loved dearly and probably didn't end the way exactly he wanted to, but it didn't surprise me at all to see that franchise pass the baton as seamlessly and as, stable as it did. And I know that, Pop was very highly complimentary of Mitch Johnson. So I'm excited to see what he does moving forward. And I like you, I loved how Manu and Duncan were flanking Pop. That was just such a nice touch.
Yeah, that's when it's bigger than basketball. We still have those type of relationships, and it's really cool. And it goes back to your point of just the coaching tree with Pop. And at the end of the day, it's about relationships, right? Yep. And how you treat people and how you empower people. And that's, for me, what always stands out for Pop. Yeah, 5-time NBA championship head coach, coach of the year 3 times, won a gold medal in the 2020 Olympics. Zach LaVine was a part of that team as well, former Chicago Bull. But it was more so of how he empowered not only his players, but his coaches and, Ime Udoka, Steve Kerr. And I'll even take it here with Becky Hammon, right, when she was on the staff for the Spurs, and you see how her coaching career has really leveled up and gone to another stratosphere, and what she's been able to do in the WNBA with the Vegas Aces and winning multiple championships there as a head coach. So is Pop understanding that, one, if you're on my staff, I'm going to put you in a position to succeed. I don't want you just to think small-minded when it comes to being an assistant on my staff. No, I want you to have bigger goals and bigger aspirations in running your own team and having your own program as a head coach. And so that's always cool when you have somebody that's really championing you and preparing yourself for something bigger than what you saw in yourself. So salute to Gregg Popovich. And again, it's great that he's still with us. I know he's had his setbacks with his health, but also to see him transition into team president with the San Antonio Spurs. He'll still be around that franchise, and imparting his wisdom and his greatness with that will be really cool. And of course, his jokes as well. So salute the Pop on that.
Yeah. And last thing for me is the one thing I'll say is that I know it's bigger than this, but like you mentioned the jokes. That is actually one thing I'm going to miss. If you ever wanted to watch hilarity, watch a pregame news conference in Chicago with Gregg Popovich and Sam Smith, my longtime colleague at the Chicago Tribune and trusted mentor. Those two were like, they were like a traveling comedian show, man. They just needle each other to no end. It was hilarious. It was unpredictable. It was everything you want. It was like theater. I mean, I remember Lawrence Holmes, who doesn't come out a lot, but came out once, pregame for the Score and watched it. It was just talking about it for days. So I will miss that. And I know that those two will carry on their relationship, but I will miss the pregame news conference between Sam Smith and Gregg Popovich.
No doubt. Holding on to those memories, man. I wish I would have been blessed to be in that room with Sam Smith and Pop as they do their routine. So I know a lot of stories that can be said and then also can't be said in terms of some things that they would joke around with. So, but that's the cool thing about when you have guys that have those type of relationships, and then, just at the end of the day, they're not treating it, bigger than what it should be. So just kind of understanding what everything means and the whole concept of, this life that we're in. So again, salute to Gregg Popovich and everything that he's achieved, but then also just the coaching tree and the players and the coaches and staff members that have gone on to do greater and better things. But that will do it for this edition of the By the Horns podcast. For my man KC Johnson, 𝗵𝐺 Bulls Insider, I'm Cam Smith. We will see everybody next week. You know that we're presented by Toyota. Toyota has more all-wheel drive and four-wheel drive vehicles than any other brand, so find yours and shine on. Toyota, let's go places. Take care, everybody.